Hi, thank you for joining us back here for lesson 2 of part 2 of the condition of the heart. I want to pick up again on Abraham, and I want to read this to you. The promise to Abraham that God made to him. Now the Lord had said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I have showed you. I will bless you and make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse him who curses you. And in all the earth, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. From Abraham, our father of faith. And the story of Abraham is very, I love that story, how he calls them out from the land of his father, of the Chaldeans, and he sends them trekking across there, Haran to Canaan, to Egypt, and back and forth. And the covenant that he gave with Abraham, we're going to discuss that right now, and talk about covenant relationship. Everything based with God is covenant relationship. We have to understand something. We're grafted in to the tribe of Judah spiritually when we come to Jesus Christ. And we come true believers, born again Christians. We're grafted in to the tribe of Judah. Paul actually says in Corinthians, he was not a Jew that is circumcised in the flesh because they break the law, but he is a Jew who is circumcised in the heart. You understand? The circumcision of the heart, this is the 8-day covenant. The circumcision of the heart is the 7th-day covenant, because on the 7th day, on the 14th day of creation, when Christ comes and reigns for 1,000 years, it'll be on the 7th day of man. So it's the 7th-day covenant. Why the 8-day covenant with Abraham and the Jewish and the Hebrew people is because the fact that, many of them are going to fail, and they're not going to be raised with Christ because they're not Christians. They're going to be raised on the 8th day. But that's another teaching. Remember, the Christians will be raised on the 7th day of man, and the Jews and all those in covenant relationship before them, from Abraham on, will be raised on the 8th day with the rest of the dead. But that's another teaching we're going to get into when we get into our next series. So I want you to remember that right now. But let's talk about covenant relationship. Genesis 17:10 through 13. Now this is God speaking to Abraham after he had left the father's land. His father passed away, and he's in the land of Canaan at the time. This is my covenant which I shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and they shall be circumcised in the flesh of the foreskin. And it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. And he who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male child in your generation, he who was born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant. He who was born in your house and he who was brought forth with your money must be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. Now, this first covenant of the flesh, we know that Abraham had 2 children. He went into, his wife Sarah gave her maid as a concubine to Abraham and Hagar, and she sired Ishmael. At the time the covenant came, they believe Ishmael was about 13 years old at that time. So when he was actually circumcised with the rest of the house of Abraham, he was circumcised when he was 13 years old. This practice was for years followed by the Muslim religion, believing like, you got to remember now, the bar mitzvah for the Jews are at the age 13. They have a bar mitzvah for their children, which is beautiful. At that time, they feel they, become adults. In the Catholic tradition, at 13 years old, and I know myself, when I was 13, I received confirmation. See, all these rituals and things are coming down actually from the Old Testament. No one realizes that and puts these things together. So now what happens is, he has Ishmael, he loves his son, but he's not the son of promise. God comes to him and says to him, and said, I think Sarah was 90 years old at that time. Her womb was dead. And the three angels came to him at the time that they were going to go and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And God said to him, I will visit her next year, and she will conceive a child. And Sarah was in the tent, and she laughed. But God heard that. So he questioned her about that. And sure enough, a year later, he did visit Sarah. He opened her womb, and she conceived Isaac. And Isaac is the son of promise because from the 8th day of his birth, he was circumcised in the flesh. The same as the Jews do today, they did a few thousand years ago. They circumcise in the flesh on the 8th day. The Jewish usually do it by a rabbi, and most people today circumcise their children just for cleanliness or whatever the reason is. And but the actual ritual for the Jew is for the rabbi to circumcise them on the 8th day. So this is still practiced right up to today. And we have to remember another thing. We're grafted in to the tribe of Judah. Paul says that we are Jews too. We're just under a different covenant. But this is all going to come up in the next series. So we'll talk more about that. Let's go to Genesis 21, 1-5. And the Lord visited Sarah and said, and the Lord did to Sarah for as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son of his old age, at his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah had bore to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised him, his son Isaac, when he was 8 days old, as the God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born. So the ritual of circumcision is still, like we said, done today. And this is the 8-day covenant. And again, it's the 8-day covenant because God knew the heart of the people. This covenant was formed under the law. It's not a spiritual covenant. This is why the generations came down to Noah, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and we'll understand why the law was given to the people and why they were circumcised in the flesh on the 8th day. That's very important. But let's go to Jacob and talk about Isaac at this point. Now let's talk a little more. So Isaac had 2 children, Esau and Jacob. Jacob they called the usurper. You know, he was a schemer, he did different things, and he actually stole his brother's birthright. When Jacob was getting older, he was losing his vision. And he decided he wanted to pray over his son Esau because he was the eldest son. Under the Jewish law, the Hebrew law, the eldest son is supposed to inherit everything. But what happens is Jacob steals his brother's blessing. First, Esau come in from the field hungry, and Jacob was making lentil soup. He was making a soup, and Esau told Isaac, he said, Esau told Jacob, he said, I'm starving, his brother. He said, give me some of that soup. He says, I'll give you the soup if you give me your birthright. He said, yeah, you could have that, I don't want it. God heard this. So now time comes to pass. Jacob is getting older, and he wants to bless his oldest son and bring the blessing of the oldest son upon him. And what happens at that point is his wife hears this, and Jacob was the favorite son. So what happens is she hears this, she hears what Isaac's going to do. She runs and tells Jacob to go, fix up a meal, go in there and steal the brother's blessing. Basically, that's what he did. So let me read this. And he put on skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then he gave a savory food and bread, which he had prepared, into the hands of his son Jacob. So he went to his father. My father, he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob lied and said, Jacob said to his father, I'm Esau, your firstborn. I have done just what you had told me to do. Please eat. Sit and eat my game, that your soul may be blessed. Let's go read this a little more about the blessing. Genesis 27 to 29. And he came near and kissed him and smelled him. And the smell of his clothing was the smell of Esau's. And he blessed him and said, surely the smell of my son is like the smell of the field, which the Lord has blessed. Therefore my God give you of the dew of the heaven, of the fatness of the earth, and the plenty of the grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brethren, and let no mother's son bow down to you. Cursed be anyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you. Jacob steals Esau's blessing. When Esau came back to the tent after Jacob had left, Isaac realized he was deceived, and Esau realized what his brother did to him. So Esau was a man of the field. He was a hunter. You know, Jacob was more the mother's favorite. He would stay around the tents with the women, and so he wasn't like his brother. He feared his brother. So what happens now is they send Jacob off, and they sent him to Laban, to Rebekah, the mother's family. So when Jacob flees from Esau, he goes to his uncle Laban, and when he finally reaches his destination, he sees this beautiful girl at the well, Rachel, and automatically he falls in love with her. And she brings Jacob to the father, and they meet, and he worked now. At this time, he stayed with his uncle, and he was total, I think, 21 years with his uncle Laban before he left him. At that time, he married the older daughter, Leah, Rachel, and he was given 2 concubines. And he sired 12 children altogether. Rachel, his favorite wife, gave birth to Joseph, and Joseph became his favorite son. And we know the story of Joseph, how he was hated by his brothers. They called him the dreamer. So we're going to read some scripture here to get through this, because I want to get through this just to get to the 10 Commandments. So we got to see how this worked. So let's go to Genesis 37:5-11. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please hear this dream which I dreamed. There we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and also stood up. And indeed, all sheaves all stood around me and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brother said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for this dream and for his words. Then he dreamed still again, another dream, and told it to his brothers, and said, look, I had a dream, another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars that bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come and bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him. But his father kept the matter in mind. So when we talk about Joseph, Joseph was actually one of the saviors, as Noah was a savior of the people, because he was sold into slavery to the Ishmaelites, and they brought him to Egypt. And let's talk a little more about that. Then his brothers went to the field to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers feeding in the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them. So he said to him, here I am. Then he said to him, please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me. So he sent them out to the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. At this time, the brothers weren't there, and he ran into someone in the field, and they told him that the brothers were in Dothan. So he proceeded and went on to Dothan to meet his brothers. Now when they saw him far off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say that some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben, the older brother, heard it and rebuked them. And he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into the pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay hands on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him, that was given to him by his father because he was the favorite. Then they took him and cast him into the pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down and ate a meal. Then they lifted their eyes up and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, and on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah, we're going to get into Judah later on. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him. For he is our brother, our flesh. And his brothers listened. Now, I want to talk a little about this. Now, Joseph was brought down and sold to Potiphar, who was a captain of the guard for Pharaoh. It comes to a point that Potiphar's wife was lusting after Joseph. And she kept trying to seduce him, but he won't fall for it. And she was getting upset with him. So she tried again one day when no servants were in the house. And he rebuked her again because of God and his covenant. And she tore his robe that he was wearing off, and he was naked, and he ran out of the house. And then she started screaming that he was trying to assault her. So when Potiphar heard of this, although Joseph had brought a lot of prosperity to Potiphar's house, he put him in the prison to the captain of the guard, and he was kept in prison. While Joseph was in prison at that time, the Pharaoh's baker and cupbearer had an argument, and he cast them into the prison, and they were put under Joseph's care because Joseph found much favor in prison. He was actually increasing the prison as far as their livestock or whatever they put him in charge over. Joseph would always profit that because he had the favor of God upon him. So the baker and the cupbearer both had dreams, and Joseph deciphered their dreams. And as he deciphered their dreams, he told the baker that he was going to be executed in 3 days, and told the cupbearer that he was going to be placed back in his position in 3 days. And he told the cupbearer, remember me. So what happens after that, Joseph's in prison, and Pharaoh had a dream. And Pharaoh called all his people and mediums, whatever he had there, sorcerers, whatever people he had to interpret the dream, and they couldn't do it. And then at that time, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. And he told the Pharaoh. And they took Joseph out of the prison, cleaned him up, and brought him in front of Pharaoh. And Joseph interpreted the dreams. When Joseph interpreted the dreams, and Pharaoh seen that God was upon him in his wisdom, he made him governor over Egypt, actually second in command over Egypt. So this Hebrew slave became a very powerful man. These are the dreams and visions that he was having, and that he was telling his fathers and brothers about, because he was gifted with dreams and interpretation of dreams. But we're going to talk about gifts later on. Very gifted, Joseph, very intelligent. So now he's in command, and as he's in command, the drought comes for 7 years. And interpreting the vision, the dream vision from Pharaoh, he said there were going to be 7 abundant years and 7 lean years. So what he does is he takes 5% of all the crops and the wheat. He tells Pharaoh to store it, so when the bad years come, they'll have reserve. So Egypt was ready for the drought because of Joseph's dream, solving the dream. And at that point, his brothers and his father were in Canaan running out of food. So at that time, Jacob, who was Israel at this time, sends his sons down to Egypt to buy grain. When they come down, Joseph recognized them. At first, he wouldn't reveal himself. He gave them a hard time because his brother Benjamin, who was also a son of Rachel, the favorite, wasn't with them. So he held one of them hostage, sent the rest back to go collect his brother Benjamin. When Benjamin came back, he finally broke down and told them who they were. At first, the brothers were afraid because of what they've done. But he told them, what you did, that God led you to do that. And now I'm here, and get our father and gather him and bring him down. So Jacob went down when he found out his son was alive, and governor of Egypt. Pharaoh gave Israel a place, Goshen, where they stayed, and they formed their city, and they started to grow there. So altogether, there were 70 people from the tribe of Israel that went into Egypt. And for 30 years, Joseph reigned. But at that time, a new Pharaoh came up. And he forgot about Joseph, and Joseph was past his time. And this is when they started to enslave the Egyptians. They were growing so quickly and rapidly that they were a powerful force. And Pharaoh felt it better at that time, Ramsey or whoever it was at that time, to bring them into slavery. So that's what he did with the Jews. And what happened at that point is they had 30 years of prosperity in Egypt, and then they had 400 years of bondage in Egypt. And that's what I want to talk about now. Now, God discussed this with Abraham when he blessed him. And this is what he told Abraham. I want to go back to Genesis 15:12 for a minute here. Let me read this to you. Now, when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. And behold, a horror and great darkness fell upon him. And he said, the Lord said to Abram, now certainly that descendants will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and they will serve them. And they will be afflicted them 400 years. And also the nation whom I served I will judge, after they shall come out with great possessions. Now, we got to think, why would God, this was already prophesied before Joseph was even born. Why would God do this? Well, the Hebrews were nomadic people. They lived in tents. They were tribes. They weren't together. But in 400 years of bondage in Egypt, they became a great nation. It said when they walked out of Egypt, there were 600,000 men with women and children. So we're saying a few million or more people walked out of Egypt when Moses took them out. Let's go a little further with that. Moses was born about 320 years after, in the 400-year captivity. And he was born to be a savior. And we know the story that the Pharaoh had commanded the midwives to kill the firstborn son of all the slaves when they were birthed. And the midwives were afraid of God. They wouldn't do that. So Moses' mother hid him in a basket and hung him from the ceiling so no one could see him. She hid him for 3 months. And then after that, she made an ark, and she put Noah in that ark. And she sent her sister Miriam out, and she placed it in the Nile. And the ark was found by Pharaoh's daughter. So the slaves pulled the ark into the Pharaoh's daughter while she was bathing in the Nile. And she took the baby out, and she called the baby Moses. So, because she took him out of the water. Miriam, when she saw that, went to the Pharaoh's daughter and said, do you need a nursemaid, to breastfeed? And Miriam took the baby right back to the mother. And Moses lived with the Jews till he was about 2 or 3 years old, fully weaned. Then he was sent back to Pharaoh's house. So we're going to leave off with that right now. And then we're going to come back with the 10 Commandments. And we're going to talk about Moses and his journey. So I want to thank you for tuning in on this lesson. We'll come back with lesson 3 and finish up this series. Thank you again for tuning in.